The great northeastern watersheds of the rivers now named St. Lawrence, Hudson, and Ohio apparently created the food banks that sustained early Native American tribal communities. Scandinavian explorers and/or settlers pushed ashore possibly as far south as the Gulf of St. Lawrence, followed by mostly North Europeans that today are commonly referred to as the Pilgrims and Puritans of New England. These people gathered around the Bay of Fundy and St. Lawrence River, but seeking adventure and trade, they pushed the frontier steadily west to the massive Great Lakes and declared Northwest Territory, including today's Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota. The mountain barriers of Vermont, New Hampshire, and parts of Maine were formidable challenges to pioneering farmers drifting from Boston and coastal communities. Ethan Allen in Vermont, after some participation in the French and Indian Wars, organized the Green Mountain Boys militia that, with Benedict Arnold, helped capture Fort Ticonderoga in 1775. New Hampshire's White Mountains, topped by Mount Washington's 6,000-foot summit, nurtured evidence of indigenous habitation by Abenaki-speaking tribal groups. But little else beyond artifacts offer clues whether this rugged region sustained anyone other than nomadic peoples plying the valleys carved by ancient glacial ice. Colonial farmers, too, apparently came and went, leaving large swaths of land to loggers and forest fires. The Adirondack Mountains, even today, have a forever wild aura about them. A lot like the interior rough lands of Vermont and New Hampshire. French priests tried to penetrate the woodlands and Indian villages scattered along the wilderness fringes, but the predominant Iroquois lodgers were not so accommodating. Religious reformers, without fanfare sometimes, were burned at the stake. And unlike other Indian groups further west, the Iroquois Confederacy aligned itself much more readily with British redcoat interests in New England and the Great Lakes region. The island-spotted St. Lawrence River waterway understandably hoisted English and then French flags over riverbank settlements at various times, creating an international border where there had been only a natural one. The colonials, though, pushed out both foreign overseers and at times forced even some native populations to migrate to and escape north across the river and lakes into English-French Canada of today. The Hudson River and Potomac River Chesapeake Bay region also attracted their share of eastern fortune seekers, pilgrims, and plain folks. These beehive communities sent surveyors further afield toward the wild interior mountains of the Catskills, White and Green Mountains, and Adirondacks, also into and over the highlands of the Alleghenies and southern Appalachia.
The soil is very fruitful, being a black earth at top and marl and clay underneath. It yields grapes, which make a good wine, strawberries, most part of the year, and the fallow ground produces naturally plenty of wild garden herbs. For timber it hath oak, cedar, pine of half height, poplar, and sundry dyeing materials, with which the Indians paint their skins very lively. They have casania, a very healthful drink.
Goudineer Knob in the Monongahela Forest is an overlook at Shaver's Mountain in Randolph and Pocahontas counties, West Virginia. District Ranger Donald Goudineer in 1936 was killed attempting to rescue his children from a house fire. After the mountains, the frontiersmen and their families found the Ohio, the Monongahela, and the Allegheny rivers and tributaries. Everywhere there were Indians. Not huge numbers by today's standards, but sizable and stubborn for the most part. Christian values manifested in some forest dwellers, but not so Christian hostilities toward land squatters instilled a fear on all sides, especially during the vast dramas characterized by the French and Indian War, followed by the ultimate American Revolutionary War. The folks along the Alleghenies were attuned to Indian threats in their neighborhoods, but not always alert enough to avoid death or abductions, again as described in Volume 1. The Draper's Meadows massacre of members of a family in Roanoke, Virginia in 1755 was one incident of many that forced the fringe settlers to keep a loaded rifle nearby and encouraged men to marry women who could shoot, and vice versa, of course. Today's Eastern American megacities and towns reside on mounds, burial sites, and residual Native American village gardens.